Is it possible for a collection of ancient texts written over 1,000 years to create a fingerprint so specific it could only match one person in all of human history? Today we're stepping into the role of detectives to investigate a cold case like no other. By the end of this video, you'll see mathematical evidence so staggering it challenges the very definition of coincidence. Most people hear the word prophecy and think of vague cryptic riddles like Nostradamus. But the Messianic profile we are looking at today is a complex, interwoven portrait of a specific family tree, a specific mission, and a specific fate. But here's the surprising part. This ancient case file actually predicts a victory over death itself, and does so centuries before the events were even possible. Let's dive in.
All right, our very first piece of evidence takes us way back to the book of Genesis. It sets up this huge cosmic conflict. You have the serpent who manages to inflict a wound, a bruised heel. Painful for sure, but not a knockout blow. But then the woman's offspring comes in and delivers the final fatal blow, crushing the serpent's head. But here's what's really interesting. That phrase, seed of the woman, in that ancient culture, everything was traced through the father's line. So to mention the woman's seed, that was a huge blinking sign pointing to some kind of miraculous birth. Okay, so that first clue sets the whole stage. Now let's see how this prophetic fingerprint starts to work, narrowing the search from, every human who's ever lived, down to just one person of interest. This is where it gets really cool.
If you don't want to miss out on invite you to the channel. If you don't want to miss out on any future deep dives on this channel, please join us by subscribing and hitting that notification bell.
The prophecies act like a giant cosmic funnel. You start super broad with the entire human race, that seed of the woman, then whoosh, it narrows down to a specific nation, the descendants of Abraham, then even tighter to one specific tribe within that nation, then to a single royal family, the house of David, and finally, it zeroes in on one tiny, specific spot on the map. That I mean incredibly specific. The prophet Micah, writing hundreds of years in advance, straight up names the town, Bethlehem. But did you catch that last part? This ruler from this tiny, unassuming village is also described as having origins from of old, from ancient days. That's a pretty big clue that we're not talking about just any ordinary king here. So the picture is getting clearer, right? But this is where things take a really unexpected turn. As the fingerprint gets sharper, a bunch of confusing contradictions start to pop up. These are details that totally flew in the face of what everyone was expecting. Yeah, check out these paradoxes. A popular expectation. People were waiting for a warrior king, a political powerhouse who would roll in and kick out the Romans. But the prophetic description? It was the total opposite. A prince of peace, a guy riding humbly on a donkey, not a warhorse. Someone focused on healing the brokenhearted. And maybe the most mind-bending contradiction of all. He's called Mighty God, but he's also described as being despised and rejected. How does that even work? And this theme of suffering, it gets laser-focused. I mean, a full 1,000 years before Jesus of Nazareth, King David pens Song 22. It kicks off with his haunting cry, my God, why have you forsaken me?" But trust me, what follows those words is even more jaw-dropping. It's like reading a script for an event that hasn't happened yet. The song details the mockery from the crowd, people gambling for his clothes, and then this, his hands and feet would be pierced. Now let that sink in. This was written hundreds of years before the Romans even came up with crucifixion as a form of execution. That is wild. Okay, so why? Why all this horrific suffering? Well, the prophet Isaiah basically gives us the why behind the what. He explains that this isn't just some random tragic event. It's a substitution. The Messiah is pierced and crushed, but not for anything he did. It's for our transgressions, our iniquities. He's taking the hit for someone else. But the story doesn't end there, in tragedy and death. No way. The prophetic fingerprint is clear. Out of this absolute tragedy comes a stunning, world-changing victory. And the timing had to be perfect. It was literally on a clock. The book of Daniel sets up this countdown that starts ticking with a specific decree to rebuild Jerusalem. It says that 483 years after that decree, the Messiah would be cut off, a turn for being killed violently. But here's the kicker. It all had to go down before Jerusalem and its temple were destroyed in the year 70 AD. That creates this very specific, non-negotiable window in history. If the Messiah didn't show up and die within that window, the prophecy was a bust. And even death itself wasn't the final chapter. A prophecy in Psalm 16 is crystal clear. His soul wouldn't be left in the grave, and his body would not experience decay. I mean, that's pointing to one thing and one thing only, a physical resurrection, a total, complete victory over death. Alright, so we've gone through the case file, we've looked at the clues, but now we have to deal with the elephant in the room. The big, final question, couldn't this all just be a crazy, massive coincidence? I mean, it's the first thing you'd ask, right? And it's a fair question. So let's look at the numbers. What are the actual mathematical odds of one person, just by random chance, having to fit this incredibly specific profile? Well, a mathematician named Peter Stoner ran the numbers. His work was peer-reviewed, checked by the American Scientific Affiliation, and what he found is staggering. The probability of just one person fulfilling only 8 of these prophecies by chance is 1 in 100 quadrillion. That's a 1 followed by 17 zeros. It's a number so big our brains can barely even process it. Yeah, a number like that is pretty much impossible to wrap your head around, so let's try an analogy. Imagine you take the entire state of Texas and you cover it in silver dollars 2 feet deep. Now take one of those silver dollars, put a mark on it, and toss it somewhere into that massive pile. Your chance of reaching in blindfolded on your very first try and pulling out that one specific marked coin, that's the same chance as one person fulfilling just 8 of these prophecies by coincidence. So let's recap the file real quick. We've got a specific town of birth, a specific way of entering Jerusalem, a specific method of death described before it was even invented, a super specific time window in history for that death to happen, and a prediction of victory over death itself. You see, the real power here isn't just one of these clues, it's all of them, locking together. So in the end, it really boils down to one question. Is this prophetic fingerprint a deliberately designed divine blueprint, laid out and then perfectly executed in history? Or is the single greatest, most mind-bogglingly improbable coincidence that has ever happened? We've laid out the evidence in the case file. Now, the verdict. That's up to you.